schedule here. So we've got a couple folks of Anthony just made it here, and Angela also is a PMP. So Angela, you're speaking to us next week to give us your feedback on how you prepared for the exam. I appreciate that. And Anthony, you can hear me. Just make sure you're on the audio.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, brother. All right, let me just introduce it. As you all know, I try to keep this thing short. We've got plenty of things going on in our lives. So, but let me talk first of all what the session today is talk about. Glad that everybody could make it, and then Anthony's going to tell us about his experiences regarding the PMP, how he prepared, anything he can share with us that is useful, and we're going to go on to the topic that I have up here, which is direct and managed project work, which means we're in integration. So Anthony, I've known for quite a while. He's been through some of the classes that I've offered through Rackspace, and he's also gone through several of these live sessions, so he's got a pretty good feedback on how we prepare and how he prepared. So Anthony, I'll give you 5-10 minutes, if that's okay with you, to get us going.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah, I've been through I think 3 classes with you, specifically on project management for the PMP, and then I think like an agile class or an ITIL class as well. To just in general, just for the studying, I did end up reading the PMBOK just a long time ago, and to be honest, that the book is very dry, and I'm not sure it really helped me, but it did kind of help with the concepts, but also preparing, Rita's PMP Prep Exam book. I ended up reading that twice. That was very helpful. A lot of the, I'm very like a visual and a hands-on learner. Like I like doing stuff. So those activities helped in that book. Also, of course, in the classes, doing the Rita's process chart and going through that was very helpful. And if you have a chance to actually cut out the Rita's process chart, kind of like the kind of what we did in class, and just do it on your own at home. I think that was helpful. I did that. Also, just the slide deck from the 300 class. I went through the whole slide deck in between readings of the Rita's PMP book. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, testing. I tried to get around to at least the 80s on all the 10 knowledge areas. That also helped. And then, lastly, what really helped is these prep webinars right before the test helped, because I really didn't understand how tricky the questions are, because some of them are really tricky. It's just like the first 2 answers you think are going to be correct. You're like, before you start reading the answers, you try to look for them, and you're like, wow, none of the correct answers are there. I got to try to find the best answer out of these kind of like okay answers. So I think that these just going over the how to best prep for just test taking with these last couple webinars that Dr. Flores has been doing, actually was super helpful. Also, just studying key terms and definitions, just so you could go through the process of elimination on some of the exam questions helped a lot. Going through the ITOs, going through just remembering the key terms, some of the major inputs and major outputs on some of those also was very helpful. And then lastly, just in the class or in the test facility, I know that they're not supposed to let you have those 15 minutes to kind of jot down everything, right. But I actually did have time to do that during that 15-minute tutorial. They didn't stand there and wait. But I actually did the tutorial, and to be honest, it was kind of helpful, because they tell you can highlight words and keep them highlighted after when you right-click them, and then you can also by right-clicking you can eliminate the answers. It'll cross them out for you, and then when you go back to review those same words that you highlighted and same questions that you X'd out, and make sure you're like, well, it's got to be between these two, so you can cross out the ones that you don't like or don't think fit. And that was actually really helpful when I went back and reviewed everything after I took the test, and all the marked for review questions I went over. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know, maybe this was just my test in particular, but I spent a lot of time studying the formulas, and I only had maybe like 4 math problems. What helped more was that I just understood the concepts of like schedule performance index, cost performance index, schedule variance, and cost variance. That was more important because even out of those 4 math questions, I think 2 of them, if you just used deductive reasoning, you could figure out which one was actually the right one and not even have to do math. But study the formulas. My test might have just been like an anomaly that didn't have a lot of math, but there's some. And then of course the networking too, knowing networking diagrams. But that's all I could really do to tell you guys to help prep, and of course keep on studying. And Dr. Flores is definitely here to help.
Well, I appreciate that. So how many? So when you were sitting in the exam, Anthony, was there a time where you thought, "Man, this is getting too hard," or did you feel pretty good about it?
Yeah, well, it goes through certain moments. You get a couple of questions that are real easy in a row, and then all of a sudden it's just a bunch of almost like theoretical questions. A lot of them had to do that I saw. But like, everything's going fine. You're in this process, and then all of a sudden this guy tells you that this thing is wrong. What do you do? And you're like, okay, well, let's figure out what the best answer is here. So I'd get a couple of those in a row, and I'd like, I'd start looking at the time. Yeah, and also like you can leave, of course, but the time doesn't stop when you leave.
Right.
So you're kind of rushing in and out if you have to go to the bathroom or need like a little food break. Because I did end up using all 4 hours to go back and review all the questions I marked for review. So I did actually take all 4 hours.
Yeah. I didn't take 4 hours. I think I took 3 hours and 59 minutes and 59 seconds, but not full. All right, good. So, yeah. Of course, I have a ton of questions for you, but I'm not taking the exam. So does anybody have questions for Anthony as you prepare, or anything that he can give you some guidance on? I think Jeff is going on.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Hey, Anthony. So how long did it take you to make the first pass before you looped back and started checking?
Actually, about 3 hours and 30 minutes, because I did take a couple of bathroom breaks, and I did have like a little quick snack break because I have a problem with concentrating if I'm hungry. So, minus that, I would say probably closer to 3 hours, maybe 3 hours and 15 minutes is what it actually took to take the test. But even with those breaks, I still had a half hour to go back and review all the questions. And I think I had about, I want to say at least like 40 questions maybe that I went back to review. And out of those, I only ended up changing like 3 to something else where I was like, oh, obviously I don't know what I was thinking at the time, or, a question later on reconfirmed something of like my thought process. And I was like, it was better able to answer an earlier question. But yeah, I would say maybe, if you're fast, or if you're, can kind of go through questions a lot, maybe 2.5 hours, but I'd say at least 3 hours, nonstop.
Okay, good. That's good. That's a good time. I mean, you did pretty good then on the time side.
Oh, thanks.
Yep. Anybody else questions? Because like I said, you always can reach out to us, and I can provide you some more information. But specific questions that Anthony could address.
Hey Anthony, this is Barry. Curious, at what question number did you hit the mentally kind of fatigue point, like, man, I'm ready to be done kind of thing?
Well, I remember trying to get to question 50, and just to see where my time was. But the question around the number was like, I just need this to end, was probably around the 170s, because you're so close, but you're so far away still too, because by the time you know how long it's going to take you to do about 25 questions, and you're still over 25 questions left, and you're looking at the time, you're trying to figure out how much it is. Some of the questions seem like they're repeating themselves, or they're very, very similar. So you're like, how many more kind of redundant questions can you get, or so similar questions are you going to get? I wish they just graded me now because I think I could pass, kind of thing. But yeah, probably around 170.
Yeah, I think that's similar to me. Yeah.
And a follow-up question to that: out of the 200, how many? And I know Professor Flores kind of warns us about this, but how many questions did you get that were kind of just obvious, just jumped right out at you as soon as you read it? I mean, if I guess more so what I'm getting at is you felt like when you reviewed it, yeah, that's right. I don't need to spend time here. Out of the 200, how many of those would you feel like?
That's a good question, because sometimes, like, I would say, just guessing, probably around 30% seemed pretty kind of like, I know what that is, but then there was a couple in there that were like, oh, I know what the answer is, but that your answer isn't there. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
God, I got to figure this out. Like, what really is the best out of these 4? Because my top 2 are not in here. But yeah, honestly, and I probably didn't mention this, but knowing Rita's process chart, and if you could cross-reference page 61 to Rita's and kind of knowing where 6.6 is in Rita's, or which one of those processes are in there. If you kind of know the order, know what process they are, and also know what knowledge area that covers, that probably helps a lot too. I did the couple nights before the test, I did kind of like a little map, and that helps a lot, because if you know the key terms from each section, if you kind of know if you've been looking at the ITOs and you know what 4 or 5 is or something like that, and then you know what section kind of on the Rita's process chart that is, that helps a lot too.
Yeah, page 61, for those of you who don't know, is page 61 in the PMBOK.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah, so know the 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 47 processes, or at least have a pretty good idea, right?
Yes, exactly. And I did actually write those down. So the 4, or not the 4, but the 10 knowledge areas, I wrote those down really quickly and kind of made kind of a little map. I remembered which ones were kind of in the 5 processes and just wrote down the numbers. Something else that helped me too, and actually wasn't a question on the test, but I found was a good kind of memorization tool for the project management plan. What's in there is basically all of the knowledge areas except for integration. So it's 5 through 10 is in there, and then all 3 of the baselines, and then there's 4 weird ones. There's the requirements one, the process or the process improvement one. So there's 4 kind of weird plans, and I think it's CCRP is what their initials spelled out to. And I remembered that before. Not that helped me, but it's kind of, it was one of those things. Is how am I going to remember what's in the project management plan? So
and how many total hours of study time do you think you had?
I think I did too many.
Yeah.
But I probably spent maybe 3 hours a day. And that does not include weekends, because weekends were kind of hard for me. Up until the end, I did do on the weekends, and I did a little bit more, but probably around 3 hours a night, maybe.
Yeah, so total.
That last month, yeah.
General idea?
Let's see. I probably did 80, which is probably, I think, a little bit overdue.
I'd say 60 to 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're on the high side, but you didn't do 200 like I did, right?
No.
Because I tell people you do 200 where you have no idea what you're doing. So.
Yeah, you start studying so much, and sometimes I was looking at some of my answers in Rita's book, and I was like, oh, it was so much more thoughtful the first time I read this.
Right.
But I would go in and try to add on to what I was like, okay, I wrote these 5 things, but there's 3 or 4 that I know that I missed, so I try to remember those as well, so that helps. But again, I would say just knowing the key terms helps a lot, and going over the ITOs really does help. At least for my exam, like I said, I may have got one that wasn't really heavy on the math, and was more heavy on the what do you do next in the definitions kind of.
I've heard that was a tendency though, Anthony, to moving away from so much math. So that's good.
Oh, really?
It's good to see though.
Okay.
All right, we've got time for one more question in case anybody has a question for Anthony. All right, I think we're good, Anthony. That's great information. I appreciate you taking the time tonight after passing the exam.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, my heart. Thank you. Yeah, my heart sank when I pressed the go button, and I'm just waiting, but it immediately pops up, and I try to read it really fast, and you passed. Now we're going to send you information on how to get PDUs. I will tell you this, though. It takes a couple days for them to send you the official email and to put you in the system.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I didn't get mine till, I think, I took the test Tuesday, and I didn't get it back till Friday.
Wow, that's kind of slow. I think it's because there's so many PMPs compared to some of the other exams. Maybe that's why.
Mm-hmm. It could be.
All right, well, congratulations. We're very happy for you, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. But I'll go ahead and drop off. But yeah, definitely remember how to answer these questions. These ones that Dr. Flores sets up are actually pretty close to how they try to trick you on the actual exam.
I've got a couple good ones for you all tonight. So,
All right.
all right, brother, you be safe.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so let's get moving. Like I said, I try not to keep you all too long, because I know you're busy. And Angela, I know you're on the line, and you'll be speaking to us next week, because Angela's from the city of San Antonio, and she also knocked out the exam. I think it was this week, right, Angela? Do I forget? Last week. Sorry. So we're talking about direct and managed project work. So first of all, remember that. Does anybody remember which knowledge area we're in right now? Which knowledge area we are with direct and managed project work?
Execute.
That we are in that process group is executing, correct? But what about the knowledge area?
Oh, the knowledge area.
You're right with execute, Barry. We are in integration. So just you got that right. So this is about doing the work. This is the process of leading and performing the work. So we're defining, how we're going to be doing the work. We're actually working on approved changes and implementing those changes. So like Anthony noted, we're looking for key terms, project objectives. This is kind of what we're doing. Why do we do this? What's the key benefit? As I've mentioned this before, we want to know the key benefit. This is the benefit is that it provides an overall management of the project work. So we created the plans, and now we're doing the work. We created the plans, and now we're doing the work. All right, so moving on. Now let's look at some key terms. I found these terms to be pretty good ones to share with you today. I try to share only information that I think is worthy of the exam, because there are many terms. So I want you to remember a couple of things. With corrective action here and defect repair, I want you to remember that this is called an intentional activity. And down here, a defect repair, an intentional activity. So be ready for those kinds of terms on the exam. Anthony didn't mention it, but I know, because I've taken, quite a few of the PMI exams, this is the way things are expressed. So let's talk about corrective action. An intentional activity that realigns the performance of the project work with the project management plan. So we had an expectation that our defects would be just 0.5%, but maybe they're 0.7. They're higher than expected. So we take corrective action to get back on track. It's an intentional activity by the project team and whatever stakeholders. The other one you have to really focus on is work performance data. Y'all remember in which process group of the five do we have work performance data? Do you remember when do we first have work performance data?
After we execute the work.
Yeah, when you're executing the work. Good answer. All right, Barry. So when you are executing the work, that's when you have it. So again, I would caution you to know those things. And as I noted, I know Anthony was sort of talking about it, but we can only have data when we're executing the work. These are data, so work performance data are raw. All right, so that's the key word. Now, from now on the exam, you might see work performance information, and you might see work performance data, and they could be trying to trick you between the two. Now you know that the word raw is associated with work performance data. So when you see the word raw, it's always data. Does that make sense? I want to make sure you guys understand what I'm saying. You can't know everything. Okay? You can't know everything. So when you see raw, you think data. Work performance data. These are observations and measurements identified during activities being performed to carry out the work. Well, we already know that, because we're going to get some feedback, and that is, for example, how much work have we completed? What are the KPIs? What does KPI stand for?
Key performance indicators?
Yep, key performance indicators. The number of change requests. So think about this. We're doing the work, and we found out that we've completed 30% of the work. That's the work completed. The KPIs is to what quality level have we done it. KPIs have more context. And then the number of change requests. How many change requests have gone to the change control board? It's just a number because we have data. So I've given you more information than you probably need to know, but I know from taking this exam that they like to trick you with these little terms, and maybe Angela, next week can talk more about that. Now, defect repair is an intentional activity to modify a non-conforming product or product component. All right, so over here, I don't know, I think I spent like 10 minutes looking for the Hubble telescope example because I use that in the ITIL class as well. So the defect repair has to do with a product or product component. So here the astronaut is trying to fix the Hubble because the lens was not sending back clear pictures. So the astronaut has to actually fix a component, a product, in this case the Hubble, that was not working properly. So from now on, remember that defect repair is the key word right here, is physical. Okay, so I've given you a couple of key terms here now. Raw data, work performance. Physical inspection in labor-focused repair, defect repair. Y'all got those? Because those are very important on the exam now. You're going to see them more than once, so if you have any questions, let me know. But those are key words. I know that when you're taking the exam or you're getting ready for the exam, you're not always thinking about all key terms, but this is very important. Are we okay with these? Any questions? I assume you're okay now because, like I said, you can't study everything now. All right, let's take a couple questions. All right, the project team worked tirelessly with key stakeholders to complete the project management plan for reasons unknown. Let me see if I can magnify this a little bit for you guys. All right, is that better? I think that should be better, right? For reasons unknown, the planning process was more intense than in the past, and the project manager has decided that it's time to move forward. The director of finance was involved during the development of the cost management plan and voiced concerns throughout regarding the budgeting process. What is the next thing the project team should do? Okay. A, given the director of finance has expressed issues, the cost management plan should be revised. B, the project manager should call one last meeting to ensure everyone agrees with the project management plan or the management plan. C, the director of finance is not a key stakeholder, so the concerns can be ignored. Or D, the project should move to the executing phase and work should commence per the schedule. All right, so which one is definitely not the answer? What is the distractor here? What do y'all think is a distractor?
C.
Good. All right. So why? That's a very good answer. Why is C not the answer? Well, let me see if I can get my chat. I don't think I have my chat open. Sorry. Okay. So why is C not the answer? See, I want you to think about why it's not the answer. Anyone?
I would say because the director of finance would be a stakeholder.
That's
because
correct.
he was involved during the cost management plan.
All right, very good job. Very good job. Was that Carrie? Was that you?
Yeah, that's me.
All right, you came through with flying colors late at night. So, all right. So now, okay, you're right, Carrie. But what else makes that Charlie wrong? What makes Charlie wrong?
Well, you can't ignore a stakeholder.
That is correct. So from now on, when you take this exam now, this is always a distractor. It's like when you get home and you say, hey, can we have this for dinner? And it's your significant other. And you go, no, I'm going to ignore you. That's silly, right? That's kind of the context. As silly as it sounds, in the world of project management, you don't ignore. You account for it. You may not do it, but you can't ignore it. All right, so it's good. I want you to focus on the key terms. All right, C's gone. All right, what's another one that maybe is not a good answer? By the way, I write these things to be hard, okay? So don't, if you're struggling, that's okay.
The projects, or D, the project should move to the executing phase and work should commence per the schedule.
Do you think it's wrong, Barry?
Correct. It sounds like we still have some concerns that have not been ironed out in the plan, and so therefore we don't have a definite plan, and it hasn't been signed off on. So we shouldn't move to the executing phase. We shouldn't go out of order.
Okay. All right. Anybody agree or disagree? Okay. It's all right to take a chance, Barry. I appreciate you doing that now.
I would agree with Barry.
All right. Carrie, was that you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen. I made this very tricky now. You guys know how I write these crazy questions, right? So look what I did here. For reasons unknown, the planning process was more intense in the past. I meant to write that in there to trick you, and I think I did a good job. Now, what did I write here? And the project manager has decided that it's time to move forward. So guess what? That supersedes everything else. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So because the project manager, now it didn't say because the incompetent project manager decided to move forward. It just said the project manager decided to move forward. Now look at the last statement that I made. The director of finance was involved during the development of the cost management plan and voiced concerns. Well, he voiced concerns throughout, but that doesn't mean that at the end that he was still concerned. It's just he voiced concerns. But do people voice concerns throughout any process?
Yep.
Yep. You see how that's the underlying point? I put it in the middle because I wanted to trick you a little bit with the last statement. I wanted to leave you thinking that they were still problematic, but it wasn't, right? Because the project manager has decided to move forward. It means that the PM has accepted the issue, has accepted the plan. Does that make sense? With knowing that, what's the answer then?
D.
Yep, that's it, brother. That's it. Is that tricky or not?
Yep.
Sure did.
But do you get it?
Yeah.
Now, is this question harder maybe than you might see on the exam? Maybe a little bit, but it's the right theme. It's the right, I've told you in class before that once it's accepted in the PM, who's ultimately accountable on the RACI? What does RACI stand for?
Responsible, accountable,
Consulted,
informed.
informed. Who's ultimately accountable for the project?
The project manager.
And he or she decided it's time to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. I know I made it trickier. Anyway, I thought about ending it with this period, but then I said I'm going to trick them a little bit more with this last statement because I figured it would throw you off a little bit. And that's the way they do it on the exam. They just add a little bit more ambiguity to you. And I use the word commence down here because I know they like to use words like that. Commence. What's another word for commence?
Start.
Start. But they won't use start because you might get it. All right. Good job. All right. So the distractor, you guys got the distractor right. And here's some possible right ones. These are just, they're subjective, but this was definitely the right answer because once we're done with planning, we can move to executing. All right, I got one more for you. All right, during the past 2 months, the project team has held meetings with stakeholders to ascertain why the project is running behind by nearly 3 months. One subject matter expert mentioned that the main problem is related to slow delivery of raw materials from a vendor who was recently hired. This subject matter expert recommends that the contingency plan is put into action and the vendor is lacking to show signs of improvement. Do you see how I wrote this part right here? Is lacking to show signs of improvement. I worded it that way just to confuse you so you couldn't figure out what the heck I was talking about. And that's the way to do it on the exam. Okay? Is lacking to show signs of improvement. All right. What is the best description of the guidance provided by the subject matter expert? A, expert judgment, which can be provided by internal and external contacts. B, subjective because it's mostly qualitative. C, objective because the subject matter expert is aware of the number of months the project is delayed. And D, both qualitative and quantitative because the information is both subjective and objective. All right, tell me what's got to go. What doesn't make any sense here? You got information from this subject matter expert regarding the vendor and the slow delivery, and the subject matter expert recommends a contingency plan is put into action. So what do you recommend? What is definitely not the answer? Or what is not the answer? First of all, tell me, let's see, beginner, intermediate, or expert level. Where do you consider this question to be? Beginner, intermediate, or expert?
Intermediate?
Okay, I don't know. I mean, because you guys know it better than me. I wrote it, so I would say probably intermediate to expert level. We're in there, okay? All right, so what is not the answer?
So I'm going out on a limb again. I think B is not the answer.
Okay, well, B is not the answer. That is correct. And I would say on a scale, though, Barry, I would put B as number 2, though. And as a 2, and number 1 is still out here, okay?
Gotcha.
All right, what would you put down as number 3 out here? Anybody? Don't worry if you miss it. Don't worry, it's all right. You're not actually. Oh, I have to tell you, this is not the PMP exam. We're studying. What would you put as number 3?
I'd say C.
Let me see. All right. Yes, I would put C as number 3 because this is not talking about quantitative. This is actually a qualitative discussion. The subject matter expert is giving you some advice, right? It's qualitative. Because what is the most prevalent tool and technique in the PMBOK? The most prevalent tool and technique. Y'all remember from class? What's the most prevalent one? EJ. What's EJ?
Expert judgment?
Yep, it's the most prevalent tool and technique in the PMBOK. Therefore, this is always what? I told you, is it quantitative or qualitative? Expert judgment is always what? Qualitative.
Qualitative.
Qualitative, right. All right, so if number 3 is gone, guess what else is gone? Or again, if Charlie's gone, guess what else is gone?
D.
D.
D. You see, when you get rid of 3, you've got to get rid of 4. You've got to get rid of it because they're talking about the same thing, only in different words. So by process of elimination is what?
A.
What's the answer? A. Does that make sense, or is that tricky?
It's still tricky, but it makes sense now.
Yeah. I mean, but you see how you can kind of back to it a little bit? Backtrack? Okay, tell me what made this question hard. Just tell me what from, other than just it's not easy.
So I think for me speaking, this is, I might need, myself personally need to review the definition of qualitative and quantitative.
Right.
Because when I read the question that the vendor is late, that's not a subjective call. Either you're on time or you're not. Yep. So I had it more in the bucket of quantitative, which is why I first eliminated the qualitative answer of B.
Right. Okay, so remember, qualitative is subjective, quantitative is objective, right?
Right.
Now, what did I do to make this hard? I gave you 3 months because I figured that would trick some of you. Right. And that's what they'll do on the exam. They'll put a number, and your brain's going to say, well, wait a second, it's a number. But this means not giving you anything about that. Now he's talking about slow delivery. He's no longer talking about numbers, and he's now talking about recommending a contingency plan irrelevant to the number of months. Irrelevant. Right?
Yep.
All right. Were those helpful?
It was.
You see how just knowing how to do one or two of these can help you with 15, 20, 30, or 40 questions? Because like Anthony said, everything is related. It's about eliminating these questions or eliminating the crazy options. All right, I'm up on time, so any questions, comments? All right, I think we're okay then. Next date, what's today? Today's the 15th, right? So 22nd. Angela, you going to be with us next week? See if she can hear me.
Yes, I will be. I will be.
Angela passed the exam last week, so she's going to give us some feedback. So thank you. I appreciate your time. I recorded the session, so I'll send it out to you. Make sure you spread the word. Thanks, Jeff. Make sure you spread the word to other people who are interested in the exam. The more dialogue we get, the better. We've got close to 100 people on our list who get this now, so it's gone from 0 to 100 in a couple weeks. So keep spreading the word so we can get more information, get more people to pass the PMP. That make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, guys and gals, and have a nice evening, and I'll see you next Monday night.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy.
All right, you bet. Good night.